at Gnomon. Yeah, we rehearsed that. It went out. It went perfectly. And thank you online for joining us here. Also, not at Gnomon, but you're at the safety of your own home or the comfort, whichever one you prefer or relate to. Welcome to Pathways into VFX. First and foremost, if you're looking for subtitles, go ahead and check out our YouTube page or our Facebook page, and we'll be able to help you out there. I know every time you all see me, I always say that I'm very excited about the event that I'm participating in. But I must say, I'm pretty excited about this event that I'm about to participate in, y'all. One of the things I think that a lot of students usually say when they come to Gnomon, or parents when they talk about their kids coming to Gnomon, is the getting into this industry, right? There's a bunch of different ways and how difficult it is, and it might seem daunting or impossible, or what do you even do? And then even when you're there, how are you successful once you're in and working within the industry? What do you do, and how do you make it work? And I'm from here, so I might not get along with people from over there. And I feel that if you feel that way, tonight is for you. Because we have in my opinion, three of the most exceptional VFX artists in the industry right now. And I'm really, really excited to just be here and ask them a bunch of questions. Now, you at home can also ask them questions, not questions. You at home can also ask them questions if you go ahead and put it in the chat right now. And then, of course, here live, we will be able to walk around with our microphone and have you all ask questions as well. So, without further ado, we're going to introduce each one of our amazing panelists today, and hopefully all of you here can help me welcome them in our Gnomon warm welcome, and then you at home can also clap. We'll be able to hear you. I'm pretty sure you already know that. So, first and foremost, coming to the stage, Senior Effects Technical Director at Industrial Light and Magic, Marcella Brown. Peep the kicks, y'all. Peep the kicks. All right. Next up, we have our senior generalist at Cosa VFX, Santhosh Koneru. And last but not least, our effects artist at Dreamworks Feature Animation, Christian Olan-Geddes. And then I get to make this very cool walk to the stage behind you. And then we all get to hang out here and talk after I hand this mic to y'all. That is working. Here you are. So, Marcella, we're going to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move our way down the line and hear a little bit about all of y'all and where you're from and where you're at now.
Yeah, hi. I'm Marcella. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, I went to school there. I was born in Toledo, but overall, Ohio is my home. So I decided to go into the military after high school, and I did that for like 5.5 years. And then after that, I got out and started my whole like art journey. I was started in Atlanta. That's where I started. Got my bachelor's in game art and design. I was an environment artist for a long time before switching to visual effects. And then I worked down there for a few years, and then decided to switch and just do what I always really wanted to do, is to be an effects artist. So that's when I came to Gnomon, and it kind of just blew up from there. Honestly, I mean, it was a long struggle to get to obviously where we are now, but yeah, Gnomon is definitely the catalyst for my effects career.
Very cool. And then, yeah, we're working on a handing off mic situation this evening. So, Santhosh, what about you?
Hello, my name is Santhosh. That's where I learned my name because it's a really long name. I'm originally from India. Uh, well, I started my career in 2009, but before that, I was doing my degree in mechanical engineering, not knowing that there is a career in VFX before that. But as soon as I came to know about this, I started learning 2D animation, and after that, that's when I came to know about Gnomon, and I realized I wasn't good to apply because my portfolio was really terrible at the time. So I decided to, practice and get myself better, and then apply for here. And eventually, in that process, I ended up becoming a graphic designer and product design and all that. And yeah, after a few years, like maybe 4 or 5 years, in doing that, I realized that I was kind of like going off path. So that's when I applied for Gnomon, came here, and after that, it's a whole new trajectory. So yeah.
Awesome. And then, lastly, Christian. We almost share a name, Chris.
Yeah,
Almost.
a little bit. Yeah, I'm Christian Olan-Geddes. I born and raised in California. Grew up in Northern California, and then moved to the Central Valley, and now I'm in Los Angeles. So yeah, I graduated from Gnomon in 2016 with Santhosh, and yeah, we um, yeah just
Graduated from
Sorry.
Gnomon, and then after you graduated from Gnomon, so you all went to Gnomon, huh?
Yeah,
Well, what a coincidence
yeah.
that
So
just it so happened to happen that way.
yeah,
Now you all also traveled from home to come to school here. Um, Now why don't we start from closest, which I'm assuming is you, Northern California, and how did that work? You were just like, I'm just gonna go to Gnomon and it's gonna be easy, and I'm just gonna move to
no,
LA.
it was not easy. Yeah, yeah. When I applied to Gnomon, I had a demo reel of like uh, YouTube videos of like intros I was making for like content creators. So it wasn't like a traditional portfolio because I was when I originally came to Gnomon, I wanted to do effects, and like I was really bad at figure drawing and all that sort of stuff. So um, yeah, I got in thankfully, and then I didn't know how to use Maya at all, like my first day, and now I don't know how to use Maya and use Houdini every day. So, uh, but yeah, I went to a a small commercial studio in Santa Monica called Electric Theater Collective. I got that internship from my career day here at Gnomon, and then I got a job at Rhythm and Hues, um, and I worked in live action. So I worked in like The Walking Dead, um, some like a shot in Game of Thrones, and like some commercials here and there. And I applied to Dreamworks for their feature animation, and I got in as a trainee. So I was training for about 6 months, and uh, yeah, it's been just kind of going there from show to show. So
So then, Santhosh, you also came from Northern California.
Yes.
I'm joking. So how was so international wise? I mean, that's an even bigger jump. So how did you kind of work through that and then get to where you are now? So you obviously had to move from wherever you were to come here, and then also to come to Gnomon, and then you're where you're at now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Um, well, I always knew that I was passionate about drawing. So not knowing that there's a career in this, the best option I could find was automobile designing. So that's why I took mechanical engineering, and that's what I was pursuing actually. Then one of my cousins told me that there is this whole career here surrounding with art. So that's when I knew what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So that's when I started looking for schools and all that. But one of my instructors told me at the time, he's my engineering drawing instructor. So he told me that get into 2D animation because that's the basic. It would make your life easier moving further up. So that's when I joined a 2D animation course. That was like a year program. And after that, I met a friend during that course, and he was the one who introduced me to all the like Photoshop, After Effects, and also about Gnomon. And we both were trying to apply for Gnomon at the time, and we opened the website, looked at the student work, and realized we weren't good. So we started like practicing and just doing whatever we can. And we started posting our work online, and that got interest from different profession, which is graphic design and branding and all that. So it was kind of fun. It's super easy work and tedious, but money was good and it was super fun. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And I was young at the time, like college, and you're making money, so you're having fun. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And kind of sidetracked completely from making movies because making movies was my passion, and that's what I was trying to get into. So one day I was like, this is not what I started this whole path. So that's when I just stopped doing that and applied for Gnomon. And I think my first email I got from Gnomon was I was rejected. I was like, oh no, that's not a good sign. And then 5 minutes later, I got another email saying, oh, we got mixed up with your name, so you're fine, you're in.
Wait, that really happened?
Yeah. That 5 minutes was the horrible 5 minutes of my life.
Oh no. we got to figure it out sometime. Don't worry.
But that was back in 2013. I'm sure it's better now. But just kidding. But yeah, those 5 minutes were horrible because I was preparing for almost like 5 years, just practicing and doing all that, and that 5 minutes was, you know. But after that, came to Gnomon and without any 3D knowledge because prior to that, I was only doing 2D work. So coming to Gnomon, I had no 3D experience. All I knew was 2D and traditional art. And the first class we had was, I think it was Surface or Hard Surface, no, Hard Surface, Maya 1, Introduction to Maya. The first class was basically how to create a light and a cube using scripting, and I was like, oh no, I don't know scripting, and if this is the software, maybe I chose the wrong career here. But after the class was done, I was talking to my friends, then none of them in my class, like Christian said, no one in my class knew how to use 3D except for one or two maybe. So we stayed in the labs for pretty much until they kicked us out at the night around 2, maybe 2:30. Um, so we were always the first ones to be on the campus and the last ones to leave the campus. But yeah, so that's how we practiced everything that they taught us here. And the best thing was the people in the school, when you're working on your assignments here, you are surrounded with your higher class people, right? So when you have an issue, you can ask them, and they will show you how to do it, and also they can show you the shortcuts how to do the same thing. Because not just in Maya, in any software, there's not just one way of doing it. There are plenty of ways to do it. So you'll learn basics in the class, but you'll learn all the cool shortcuts with your peers in the school. So I'd highly advise being on the campus as long as possible.
I think actually most of the students here are only here because they were already on. How many of you were already on campus today? Yeah, that's a
There you
lot
go.
of hands. Yeah, a lot of times, if depending on if you come later on in the day and you talk to the students, they're a lot more groggy than at the beginning of the day. When you talk to them at the beginning, they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" Near the end of the day, they're like, "Hey."
Yep.
That just means that they're working towards their dreams.
Yeah,
though.
like after 12 o'clock, you can hear weird noises from the labs. People keep shouting just so they can get that drowsiness from the head.
Yeah.
It's fun times.
Okay, so then Marcella, you also had to move and come to Gnomon, and then you had a stint after that. So how did that all kind of transpire for you?
Um, yeah, it was definitely like I don't know, like it was a shock because mine happened very quickly. Like I got into Gnomon, I want to say September, and then I think the term started in October, so I had a month to like sell as much as I could and pack everything in the
You
car.
were still in Ohio?
No, I was in Atlanta still.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah.
So in a month.
Yeah, basically. I think it was that long. It was very short. Cause right, like in July, I had they had laid like a lot of people off, so I was like, well, I might as well go to Noma, take up what I've always wanted to do. So even though it was a hard time being laid off, but it just opened another door. That's how I see it. So, but yeah, I moved from Atlanta, packed everything in my car, and just came out here, stayed with friends, multiple people until I got my own spot. And then from there, it was just like he said, we slept in the labs anyway. So, yeah, basically. So yeah, it's like we was just here. You just live, eat here, basically. I mean, you go home to shower, and
Sometimes.
you come back. Like that's really it. That's what it was. That's probably what it is, right? Like yeah. So yeah, it was similar stories. Like you grind it out. Like I was in effects. Like maybe a few months. You graduated if you guys graduated like a year before I did or something like that. Yeah. So we knew it. We all knew each other. So it was like the same thing he said. Like people who knew Houdini. Like I was right over Christian's shoulder. Like, well, how did you do that? Like, so yeah, it's all of that is very true. Like the whole culture here of everybody working and learning from each other is definitely probably the biggest help you can have. I mean, their classes are cool, and you learn from their teachers and their experience and their working in the industry. But it's really what happens in the lab is is where you learn the most, I think.
So you develop a lot of those not only technical skills, right, with all the programs and everything that you learn, but you also kind of in a way develop some social skills by communicating with each other.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And kind of like, oh, how did you do that, and so on and so forth. Did any of that transition into your professional career? That kind of those like soft skills that you learned just by communicating with your classmates, did that help at all once you transition into your professional career?
Oh yeah, definitely. That doesn't stop. It's just the lab is now the floor, or the office, or I guess if you're working from home, whatever the chat is. But yeah, like I'm constantly asking questions still now. Like now they're my supervisors, but I still ask them questions and how do you do this and how do you do that? Because everywhere that I've been to, it's a different pipeline. They're using Houdini in a different way. They have their own proprietary stuff. Like every studio is different. So you have to ask these questions. You have to, even when we were going into the office when I was in Montreal at Skyline, we were literally be sitting this close to each other, my screen, his screen. What are you doing? How did you do that? Even if they're on a different show, it's like, ooh, what's that? Like, taking tips and tricks and add it into your stuff, and yeah, definitely.
So, what do you think was the most nerve-wracking thing for when you started on your professional career? And this will be for all of you. So, coming in, you weren't worried about asking questions. Kicking down the door, you started asking questions. What was the difficult thing? What was the hurdle kind of to overcome that was different than being at school?
I think the biggest thing is dailies. That was the biggest.
Now, for those who don't know,
Oh,
what are dailies?
for I guess if you don't know what dailies are, basically, I don't know if they still do that. I guess it depends if you go into the office or not. But they used to. My first job with dailies was at NPC, and we would work on our work during the day, and then at I don't know, say 1 o'clock after lunch, you would have dailies. So everybody would file into this huge theater. You would sit down, and there would be your supervisor in the front, and he's just telling you everything that's wrong with your work. Like, it's really the first time you're like, whoa, this is real. Like, this is not a personal project. This is not my story. We're working towards a common goal. So I wish I had known what that pressure was going to be like when you have to like sit there and explain yourself, and especially when you're a junior and this is your first show. Like it's nerve wracking. Like so, but yeah, I wish that was more explained when I was in school. But yeah, but either way, you get through it. You get better. Your voice gets stronger. Your experience gets longer. So it works itself out.
I think that would be really interesting to go into a time machine and see you walk into that first one, just be like, "What's happening in here?" And then as it all unfolds, just see your eyes dilate. So, what about you, Santhosh? What do you think that was like the biggest thing that when you started on your professional career, like, wow, this is a shock?
Not to mess things up. Because if I messed anything up, then that would slow down the production. So I didn't want to be the one who slowed down the production. So that was my biggest fear. But going into my internship, I mean, obviously that was the thing I had to get over. It took me about like a week because my supervisor was amazing. He helped me get used to the pipeline and how to navigate through the pipeline and basically work with all the departments, because being a generalist, you have to coordinate with everyone depending on the tasks that you're given. And not all tasks are going to be the same, because one project you might be doing modeling, and another project you might be doing rigging, so you have to be communicating with everyone. So that internship really helped me. That was at Electric Theater Collective where he worked at. So that again, like internships, the best. It gets you used to the pipeline, the work environment, and everything. Work environment is pretty much the same as Gnomon, or sometimes easier, I guess, because the stress that you go through here with all the assignments and trying to be the best in the class and everything. Once you go out there, you'll feel more relaxed because you have much longer deadlines than what you have here. So it gets easier. Uh, Not all the time, but there will be projects where you have to. But yeah, so that was my biggest thing. And then going into Blur, that was a little bit stressful because I was surrounded with so many people that I idolized when I was an infant in this industry. So knowing that I was surrounded with them, it was kind of intimidating at the time. But once I got used to that place, it was kind of like Gnomon. You can just walk up to them and ask questions, or just say hi and just see what they're working on and how they're working, and helps you expand your skills. So
All right, Christian, we're on you now.
Yeah, it's kind of what but they both said. Like especially like in rounds, like or yeah, when it's just you're showing your work, and it can be very intimidating, like starting out. But yeah, like having an internship where you're just kind of like thrown in the water, and like the first commercial I worked on, it was like like the end of the world, Jose Cuervo, like meteors and all that kind of stuff. And it's intimidating because you have a lead, and the lead will give you a setup, at least in effects, and it like you think you know like what you're doing as a student, and then you get a setup from someone that's been working for 10 years, and it's you're just kind of like thrown in the water, and yeah, you just kind of have to learn it. And that I think that was one of the biggest hurdles in school, was like, you know, you're just trying to be the best artist you can, but like later on in the industry, it gets to the point where like you know how to do the art, and it's like, how could we make things more efficient for a show? Like if we have, you know, a shot with like 100 shots with effects in it, how can we make this more efficient and give this out to other artists? So yeah, it's a little bit of that, but yeah.
Just a tad bit. So then, if you could have like a takeaway and just kind of one prep thing of like, okay, this, if somebody was coming in brand new to a place that you had been for a while, and you had one thing that you could tell them, what would be that kind of one little piece of advice?
Just ask. If you have a question, just ask. Like, it's better to know what the answer is than like sitting at your desk and trying to figure it out yourself. Especially like at DreamWorks or like these big studios, it's like they have a really big pipeline, and you really don't want to like, you know, wait till the last minute, especially if like you're already getting shots assigned to you. And that's kind of like the whole spiel. Like, it's just like asking questions. Like, I think there's a rule in the industry. It's like if you don't know what you're doing, like, and if it's been 15 minutes, just go and ask someone, and probably not your supervisors because they're stressed out. But yeah, it's good to also have a mentor, like especially like, you know, if you're working with your leads, it's like ask them questions. Like, you know, you could even like at DreamWorks, thankfully, it's like you can look at like any shot that like you've admired, and like look at everything, and go to the artists that worked on them, because like they're super friendly, and I'm very thankful for that as well. So yeah.
What about you, Santhosh? Somebody's coming in for the first time and they go, "Oh, Santhosh, you're my hero."
Nah.
And you're like, "Here's this one piece of advice."
If Maya is acting weird, restart Maya. No, just kidding. I mean, like you said, like if you have any, if you're stuck with anything, ask questions. But at the same time, don't keep bugging everyone, because everyone's got deadlines. So, I mean, pretty sure when you start the company, they'll assign you a mentor. So you can ask them questions if you're stuck with anything. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And as a student, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you're surrounded with your instructors and so many students that can help you with. So if you're choosing a project, choose the one that is more intimidating to you, so that once you finish it, the confidence that you gain is going to be much more helpful in growing your skill faster. So.
All right, Marcella, wrap us up. What do you got?
I'd say for me is be open to learning, because a lot of, not even just like new students, but a lot of people who are juniors, who maybe they've been in a couple of different studios, and they have a little bit of experience on them, and they're so used to working in a certain way where they came from, like, but that's not how it goes over here. So I see a lot of that happening, even with people who've been in, like they're just, you know, kind of tight with their learning. So I don't do that, because it's better to just accept it. Like right now, I'm learning everything brand new. It just feels every day, it feels like a new thing. So if I were to close myself off to knowledge and wisdom for these guys who've been working for 30 years, like, what is that good does that do to me and the project that I'm on? So I think that's probably, other than asking questions, that's the biggest thing, is just listening and just absorbing.
It sounds kind of like as a whole to just not have that much of an ego. Like, don't let your ego get in
Yeah.
the way of your job, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, you were talking about dailies, right? And somebody criticizing your work, essentially. How do you remove your personal from the professional? Because that's got to be difficult, right? Because somebody's looking at your work, and at certain times it almost has to feel like they're talking about you, but they're not necessarily talking about you. They're just kind of talking about, the project as it stands. Do you find that easy for you to make that separation? Do you have any tips to make that separation?
It's easy now, just because, you know, this is not mine.
Right.
You know, but even though you do get those shots that you feel like they're yours, because you worked on them for a month or whatever. But essentially, like I said, you're here to serve the story. So I think as long as you keep that in your mind, that it's not personal. Now it's different if that supervisor is not a good leader and he's being belligerent, or she, or whatever. But most of the time, it's those notes are there to help guide you and helps you become a better artist. And because that's what they want. So you need to just give them what they want and let everything else go. That's what bars are for. You can complain.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
go to bars and then let it go. Got it. Santosh, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. Well, as an artist, we are always growing every day, right? So if you're getting a critique, take it as as an advice to improve yourself. So, when you're working at a company, the critics are basically they're trying to make the show as best as possible. So, those critics, are there for you to improve later. So, don't take it personally. Take it as a way of improving yourself. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I think kind of what they said, like, you don't want to be the person that like is kind of like arguing with the director or like your supervisor, because I've seen that with like other artists, like in places that I've worked, and it's not a good environment, because at the end of the day it's what the director wants, or like what the supervisor needs for you to do your job. So it can be intimidating too, like showing your work, especially like if it's not going like in the right direction. But that's where like you have like your mentors, and you have like everyone that's sitting around you that could like they might have an idea of how you could accomplish the goal for your shots or something. So yeah, it could be a little intimidating, but like it is pretty good, like especially like starting out, because it's you'll start getting the eye for detail and critique, and at the end of the show you'll already know kind of what they're wanting and what you need to do to make things look the right way, and you kind of wish you could just go back to the show and with all that knowledge that you originally had, but yeah, I think that's yeah.
So we've been diving a lot into the professional. So let's take it a little bit further back, go into a little bit of the personal aspect. There's obviously like this aha moment, I'm going to pursue art. And then there's your circle, your pre-Gnomon circle, right, of people that may be very supportive, maybe not so supportive. Mentally, how do you kind of work through that to like obviously to get to Gnomon, right? You had to get through that. But then obviously, for a lot of artists, it's every day sometimes, right? Sometimes you have a bad day and you're like, holy smokes, like what am I doing here, So what pre-Gnomon, kind of how you were like, no, this is what I want to do. If you had the support, great. Then talk about the amazing support and lifeline that you had, overcoming that, and then kind of now where your head's at with that.
Yeah, I guess like for me, like the support was kind of like half and half. Like I have like my mom and my sister that are there for me, and then like some other people in my family were like, oh, well, maybe like go to community college, or go to some other trade school. But like this is kind of what I had set in mind of what I wanted to do, and I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so like getting the funds and stuff wasn't the easiest thing. But I'm glad it kind of all paid off. So yeah, it's yeah, I think that's.
What do you think was one of your biggest hurdles when you first started, like coming to Gnomon and all of that, like mentally, like just kind of gearing up for it? Were you already, was a drive already there? Do you feel? Or
It was, yeah.
okay.
Like, I think like the first apartment I lived in was like 2 or 3 miles away, and I would walk to class every day. And then one day it just really rained, and it was bad, and I had like wet shoes all day. So I moved closer to Gnomon, and yeah, I think just it was, it's almost like a change in a lifestyle because, you know, like you're living your normal like life, just trying to like figure out what you want to do, and then you get into Gnomon and it's like, yeah, you're coming in at 9 a.m., you're leaving at 2 a.m. every day, and it's before you know it, you're done. So it's it was a lot of fun, and I think like the only stressful stuff was like between terms, like those 2 weeks, because you're like, okay, well, you know, have to get ready, or but yeah, so.
So I guess the takeaway here is find something that you love it so much that you'll be willing to walk 3 miles in pouring rain for.
Yes.
Ah, got it. Okay, so Santhosh, same question for you.
Well, coming from a family of doctors and engineers, when I told them that I'm going to pursue this career in visual effects, it was a huge shock for my parents. So it took a lot of convincing to do. Luckily, my sisters supported me, and they convinced my parents. And after they saw that I'm actually making money in this profession, they were like, "All right, okay, cool. You can do whatever you want." But yeah, that was a deal I made with my parents, is that I would do engineering and mechanical so that they would support me, take classes for 2D animation. So that was the deal, and after that, I kind of like jumped into this full time. And then I moved here. Again, my parents supported me with the whole Gnomon thing as well. So, I mean, without that support, I couldn't have been here. So after that, I was living in Pasadena actually. So I used to take the metro every morning around like 6:37. No, 6:30, because 7 o'clock the rush hour starts. So I had to like be early there. So I used to be here by 8:30, and they would open 8 o'clock, and 8:30 they would open the gates, and I used to sit in the labs after that.
All the time, just
Yeah.
lab time.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question again?
So the question is your aha moment. Oh, I'm gonna pursue art. I'm gonna do this, and then your pre-Gnomon bubble of people that were either supportive or not supportive, and kind of, going through that. Just a little bit of that insight.
I think my immediate family, like my sisters and my brother, they just, if that's what you want to do, let's go. Like, that's how I think they just supported me. That's what I wanted to do. But I think it took like my older generation. They were like, "Are you making money? Like, how are you living? Like, are you okay? Like, So yeah, it wasn't so much of like a shock to my immediate family, because I think they already knew that, okay, she's just going to be an artist. But my aunts, uncles, grandma, they all probably was like, we don't know yet, but they're fine with it now. Like everything worked out. So yeah, it wasn't so much of a struggle, but it was a struggle coming here, living here, because LA is very expensive. And then while you're here at Gnomon, you're always here until you don't work, essentially, really. So yeah, it was a lot of broke days and struggle meals and long nights, early mornings, but you get it done eventually. That passion does take you dry, because that's the only thing you got when you're not working.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure.
When I was broke, in order for all my friends to feel better about being broke, we'd call it balling on a budget. Yeah, because then we were like, oh, balling on a budget. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just kinda. So you all seem to have pretty good support, but between the three, you all had very strong independent drive as well. because without that, I mean, I think that is a lot of part of kind of what drove you through this and through Gnomon and what continues to drive you today. But through your career, through your time at Gnomon, do you have a moment that sticks out in your mind as a very difficult time that you kind of had to overcome to really kind of buckle down and either tap into all those things that you've done, and all those things that you have, so your support team that you have outside of Gnomon, the one that you have inside of Gnomon, and then your personal strength just to power through this point, whatever it was. Do you have a story of that, of a difficult time that you had to overcome?
I mean, for me, it was just, I don't know. I had such when I was here, I was just tunnel vision. Like nothing else mattered. So it wasn't as so much of something I needed to overcome. I think coming from an environment artist like background, me modeling, texturing, and then switching over to being an effects artist, I think that was the hardest part for me, is the technical aspect. Like I still struggle with all the coding and like the science and the, everything that goes deeper into effects than just explosions and fire and stuff like that. But other than that, I think it was just I didn't expect to live here, like, but you get used to it. But yeah, I think it was for me the hardest. I don't really have too many stories. Like, I mean, we could start talking about stuff, but it would be the same, like thread. Like everybody was here. We were all hungry. We were all, yeah, like trying to sneak into labs wherever we could, like.
Don't do that, kids.
Oh,
No.
of course, don't do that.
Yeah.
But, we did what we had to do to try to get our projects done with the resources that we have. So, yeah, I mean, I have so many stories, but, all of them are just broke artists trying to make it. Like,
Yeah. And like you had mentioned before, all three of you, that it's almost like a flash, your time at Gnomon.
Yeah, because you're just, like I said, this is all we knew. Like, we went, like I said, we go to bars to hang out on the weekends or whatever, but this is it. When you're here, you're here. And if you're one of those students that's like not in the lab as much, that's when it starts to get awkward. Like, that guy, he doesn't work that hard, so we're just gonna be over here. But most people they're waiting outside the lab waiting for the class to end, like just staring at the teacher, like, in this class now, like, so I can use the computer. But yeah, it was like that basically.
Did any of y'all? Yeah, go ahead, Santhosh.
For me, I don't think I had any internal struggle that I can think of while I was at Gnomon, because we were always, like Marcella said, it was always a tunnel vision, trying to learn Maya and trying to UV, and those were the only struggles that we had to overcome, because Maya was a little bit intimidating when I started here. But now when I look, even all my friends and I, when we look back at how we lived in terms of how we ate and what we did, like, how did we do that? Sometimes I try to live the way I lived during Gnomon. I just can't.
You'd save so much money.
Yeah, so much money.
You'd save so much money.
A lot. But yeah, looking back, I just can't live that way. But while I was in Gnomon, it was always about work. So it never dawned on us that we are going through anything. So.
Yeah, I think my only struggle during Gnomon was my wisdom teeth coming in, and I powered through it for 2 weeks, and just endured the pain and going through the classes because I didn't want to lose any time, and I didn't have the money to get them taken out, and it was a struggle. But I mean, yeah, and I think the only real struggle I had was just, after it was right after school, I remember there was a point in time after my second paycheck, I had negative $100 in my bank account, and I didn't have any money because I didn't have a car, so I was trying to Uber. And I remember I opened the Lyft app, and they had the free ride for your first time, and I took the free ride, and that was my ride home. And that's that's like a week later, that's when I got my first like big job at Rhythm and Hues, and I was making a little more money, and I was able to actually pay my student loans, and because it's like the stuff you don't really have to worry about like going in school, but like yeah, I think that first month like after Gnomon, it's like it kind of just hits you because it's like you know you need to find a job, you gotta like pay for your loans, you gotta figure out what you're gonna do like if that doesn't work. So thankfully, I mean it all worked out in the end, but yeah, it's not easy.
So all three of you had a pretty solid path in Gnomon. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were locked in. You were kind of like tunnel vision. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get from A to Z. That being said, is there anything at all that you feel like while you were here you would have done differently? Like you wish you just would have done that one thing or gone to that one class or, you know, said hi to this person a little bit more or done it all the same?
I think would have just done it the same.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a good way to have it too, because then that way you feel confident in what you've done, which leads into kind of confidence that you have now, which is good to have confidence within your work. So I think now is probably as good a time as any if anybody here has any questions. And then we also have questions coming from the live stream, so we'll just have to tap in and start walking around with this cube. So I'm going to go grab this walking cube, and then we're going to ask y'all some questions. Does that sound good?
Sounds
All
good.
right, cool, great. Yes, I'm going to hand you a regular mic first, and then I'll get our cube mic. Here, you can stand up and ask your question.
My question is to Santhosh G. V put G to give respect in India. So I'm a film editor. I don't go to Gnomon, but I have a question that after you completed the Gnomon course, how many years of OPT did you get? And was there like, did you go for an artist visa or did you go for an H-1B visa? And how was all of that process?
So I was here on F1 student visa at the time. So for F1 you get 6 months. So after that I applied for O1 visa. So I'm on O1 right now.
Oh, sweet. So in those 6 months you were able to get enough credits and be published in magazines and prove your credits to get an open visa?
I had 5 years prior experience coming to Gnomon, so that helped. And at the same time, the stuff that I did at Gnomon got published as well, so that helped as well.
I have just one additional question too. Like when people are hiring you, does it actually matter which school you are coming from? And if one teaches or become equipped and disciplined about the skill going to no school whatsoever, do you think the people out there sort of look out for your competency of the skill, or the school is also a factor when people are hiring?
Art is the first thing that they'll look for, and school is just icing on the cake.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we got a question back here. And then if any of y'all have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand. I'll find you.
Hello, thank you for being here. This one's for Marcella. So you've had the chance to work at many different studios and interview with a lot of them, but what were their differences, if any, compared to interviewing with like ILM, MPC, Scanline, like Weta, like, or did they all have pretty universal traits when looking at, or you feel like they had for a potential hire?
What's the difference between all three?
I get-
Interview process?
Yeah, I guess so, but like, did some of them have specific traits that they probably preferred to look for at their studio, or did they all have pretty universal things that looking at your reel?
It was different for each studio. Like, NPC, I started as a junior, and they were, I got hired under their, let's just call it like they have like the Effects Academy back in the day. Basically, they take juniors and lighters and comp people, and they train them up. And they put you on a show, and then after that show, I guess they keep you dependent on if they have work or, I guess how well you did, But the interviews, each interview everywhere I go was different. Scanline's interview process was obviously different because they use, back in the day, they primarily used 3ds Max and their own proprietary stuff inside of it called Flowline. So you get I got the Houdini questions, the Vex and the VOP questions and all that, but still at the same time, hey, what do you think about learning this software and how you feel about, I guess focusing or specializing in this because they needed people to run Flowline for sure. Disney was a little bit different. It really, I mean, Disney was, they wouldn't even talk software if I remember right. It was, I think they just really wanted to know who I was, especially coming from a strong VFX background, coming into animation. They just really, I think they really wanted to know how much I cared about story and not just making huge spectacles of like awesomeness. Like it's more about story over there, right? And I guess the switch to Weta, they were more concerned about, do you really want to work on Avatar? That no, I'm dead serious. That interview was probably like my shortest interview I've ever had since. It was 15 minutes. They explained to me, this is what we're doing with the water, and it was crazy. And do you want to be a part of this? It was literally yes or no. And then I was like, yeah, of course. So, and then that turned into a whole thing. Pixar was interesting. Pixar, I appreciated that interview because they really care about social issues over there. So it was more about, it was almost like Disney 2.0 but deeper. Like they really wanted to know how I felt about like giving back to the community. They wanted to know how I felt about environmental issues. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yeah, I kind of really like respected that interview a lot because I haven't had one like that since. And ILM was just nerve-wracking because by the time I got to ILM, I had like 3 or 4 different reels, and they literally went through every single last one of them. And what is this? And how did you do that? And these are guys who've been in for like 30 years who are kind of like our, I don't want to say grandparents, but they you know, ILM is kind of the grandfather of all of visual effects as far as like on the visual effects side of things. So yeah, they went through everything and they were nitpicking. But once I got in, it was just like, hey, it's like, oh, like who were you yesterday? Like, but yeah, it's definitely different everywhere I go. But obviously, they care more about your artistry, who you are. I guess the higher you go, because the teams get smaller, you know. So yeah, it's a long answer, but yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I had a question. You guys mentioned something about there were a lot of classes were very difficult, like the time constraints to try to finish a project and get it done on time. And you also mentioned that there are some students that were just not quite putting in as much effort as some of the other students that weren't there, you know, banging on the door to get into the labs all day and night and stuff like that. So I'm just curious how it works at Gnomon as far as like, there are some students like you three, obviously, who had a real drive and a real ambition and wanted to be in there and wanted to be in the lab and wanted to do a great job and be head of your class, like the gentleman in the middle mentioned. You know, you kind of want to be top of your class. The other students that were kind of like putting less into it, do they kind of fall behind, or do you guys kind of try to help? Is it kind of a group effort to get everyone through the exit? Or do you kind of let people kind of like they just kind of fall behind? And is it possible to kind of fail out of Gnomon or just not kind of make the cut halfway through the year?
I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe you don't know that answer.
No, I don't know how it is now
Yeah.
as far as failing. But when I was here, what I meant by that is I would say 98% of people. It's not just us. Like you're looking at 3 of us. Like like everybody was on their like drive. Like everybody was on it. Of course, we helped each other. But yes, like anywhere, like there are going to be people who it might not be as mature. I think a lot of it was maturity with those people. Maybe they didn't take it as seriously. But it's not that they didn't have the talent, you know, because you have to have the talent even to come in. So I think it's just about, for me, what I saw of maturity. But I'm a little older coming in because I think I got here when I left here when I was like 30. You know, some kids are coming in out of high school, so they might not be accustomed to like nothing but art 24/7. Like, so, but yeah, that's just me.
Well, Also, it's all about speed when it comes to production. So you have to get trained with, you know, uh, to be faster in work. So um, if you're working in the labs here, then you are surrounded with people. So if you have any question, you can ask them and you can get over that issue and move on, right? But if you're working from home, then you're stuck with that issue for an hour or two, just trying to figure out what's going on. So you're wasting that time. So it's all about how fast you learn. There are people in my class who never used to use the labs. They would just go home right after the classes are done. But it's not like they're bad at what they're doing. They're really good. It's just the preference of what you, how much you want to learn, or how proficient you are. Like if you're really good at what you do, and if you can fix the issues faster, then sure, you can work from home and you can still be the best. But if you're learning something really new that you don't know anything about, I would recommend being around with people so that you can ask and just, get over that.
I think it's also like the social aspect because, when you're in the labs, you're working every day next to like the same students, and like at the end of the day, like there is like a social side to the industry, and like that helps you, and like the friend that you're sitting next to every day might be the one that helps you get a job in 3 years. So it, like if you're not coming, then like it you're kind of missing out on that. But like there are like people that like just couldn't, because they have lives, and like there's people that I've met that like like they're still like in like working, and they're coming to school, and like then they go home, and like because they might have a job, or they have a wife, or they already have kids that like they're worried about. So like there is like it's everyone has like their situations, and like if it is a little more beneficial if you can be here longer. So I think that's kind of like what we were like pointing out. So yeah.
Hi, I guess my question's a little bit guided towards Marcella. As a female artist in the industry, what's something that you wish other people like coming up into the industry knew, or something that's like, oh, like it's really nice that I knew this ahead of time if I did?
I mean, a lot of stuff you just learn as you, especially when you're on your first big show. You learn so much. Um, but I guess the biggest thing for me, like I said, was I wish I knew about coming from Gnomon. I wish I knew about dailies, and I wish I knew about the whole pipeline side of things. Like, cause here you're working on your project. You go to class. You go to another lab. You just rinse and repeat, right? But I didn't know anything about pipeline. Like, what is pipeline? I thought we were just creating things. Like, but yeah, I think pipeline and dailies and just I guess the overall culture of the studios, and that changes wherever you go. Um, so yeah, I think those three things were a big like eye opener for me, the starting out for sure.
Hi, I'm Marcus. First off, thanks for taking the time to be here. Also, shout out Marcella, big fan of the podcast, big fan of all that you're doing with like
Thank you.
VFX Club. Question for all of you. Of course, we're here to learn for like, you guys have kind of gone through this, and I think we can learn a lot kind of from each other and our peers. So I'm curious, some of the biggest things that you've learned kind of like from your peers as you guys were kind of going up in this industry.
Yeah, I guess for me it's like the leads that you're working with on your shots, like they've been in the industry for a longer time, and some of them are like really artistic, and they come from like a 2D drawing background, and then some of them like they know how to build ray tracers from scratch, and there's a lot you could take from like both sides of that, and willing to like learn, and like that just like it could be a little frustrating because like even like at a school, it's like I wouldn't say I was the most technical artist, but then going to like Dreamworks, it was like even like in my interview, it was like good cop, bad cop. It was like one person trying to get to know you, and another person asking you like, oh, well, like, how would you build this ray tracer from scratch? Like, or like, how would you do this shot as a procedural, like, animation versus a simulation? So, like, it's could be a little tricky. Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Just kind of like what you learned from your peers as you were kind of going up in this industry. Just people at your level.
Pretty much everything, actually. Because when you're graduating as a student, you're confident about your basics, right? But in production, it's a lot more than that. You need to understand the pipeline, the tools that they develop, and how you use those tools for your benefit and all that, right? So your peers, your seniors, and they help you a lot with that, and also you learn new techniques in terms of like shading, in terms of rigging, in terms of pretty much everything. If you're a generalist, you are in for a treat because you're working with so many departments at the same time. So you get to learn a lot, and so your job will be so much interesting as well. I mean, I'm being biased as a generalist, but you don't have the same same kind of work every day. So you're teamed up with a different artist for every project. So you're learning a lot, and you're only learning a lot if you're asking questions. But if you're just trying to fix things on your own, you're wasting time and you're wasting a lot of valuable knowledge. So.
I guess the biggest thing that helped me was having mentors. Like every studio that I go to, I make sure like to find someone that I can latch on to that will be willing, because not everybody has the time, right? That will be willing to help you and answer questions and like look at your scenes and your shots. I think another thing that I still do that's important to me is to not even get to know my supervisors, to get to know the production, because they're going to be I don't know, I won't say your biggest allies, but they're going to be the ones that are assigning you shots. They're probably going to know the show that you're going on to next. Like they're the behind the scenes people that really know the inner workings outside of you being an artist. So I think, yeah, just being open and having those leads and having a mentor or a buddy. Everybody gets a buddy, especially when you go to a new studio. But yeah, definitely tap into the production side, because they're going to be the ones that's going to really just make sure that that bottom doesn't fall out after your next show. So, yeah.
Hi. Thank you guys for being here. I am completely brand new to animation and have only just really gotten interested in seeing it forward as like a career. And I believe, Santhosh, you brought up at the very start of the panel having a background in 2D and traditional drawing. And I was curious for all you guys, like, what was your starting point? And was it something that you yourself thought I should start here? Or was it something that a teacher or somebody here at Gnomon recommended to you as like, this would be a great place to start for what you're wanting to do?
My starting point, I started with 3D. Like I was never like a good 2D artist. I'm still, don't ask me to draw anything. Like it's not gonna be great. Yeah, so I started with 3D like straight out the gate. Like I started on Maya side with modeling, texturing. Obviously wasn't that good at it, so I ended up as an effects artist. But yeah, like even when I came here, like when I switched over to visual effects, I knew that I needed to eventually learn Houdini at some point, like the earlier the better. And I knew that I was very adamant about me being like water TD, water TD, water TD. That was the first thing in my mind. The only thing I was kind of focusing on is probably not the greatest thing to do when you're first learning Houdini, but yeah, like that was my starting point. Like 3D was always the way to go.
For me, the reason I started 2D is because I didn't know anything about this industry, and most people I spoke to, they said 2D is like the basic for everything. So I just listened to them, went into 2D, and then I started doing matte paintings and 2D animations in Flash and traditional drawing animations. Um, but again, I don't know how 2D helped me right now, but no, actually it did. So the reason I got into this is because I like movie making, right? So I like storytelling, and 2D seemed like the way to get that on the paper and get it on the screen. And after that, I completely switched from animation to matte painting, and then to branding and UI design and all that, which is something I don't do anymore. Then I came to Gnomon, and here I started learning all the tools, knowing what I want, because my end goal from Gnomon was that uh, I need to learn all the tools so that I can make a cinematic. That was the goal. So at the end of the course, I chose we get electives when you get into demo reel. So that's when I chose classes that I was missing in the previous classes, like motion capture and all that. So and then there are classes like visual structure, storyboarding, and look development and all that. It gets you super excited because they teach you how to drive an audience eye using art. Basically, how you position a tree, or how you like cast a shadow in the shot. So everything has a meaning to what you do. So all that kind of got me excited about. And going into production, again, same thing. My goal was to learn everything that goes into production, so that when I get to a point where I can make my own thing, then I know what goes into what, and then I can plan my movie better. So that was my goal.
Yeah, I think for me it was like I came to Gnomon knowing I wanted to do effects, and um, at first it was like just learning Maya and getting the basics, and then I had an upperclassman just one day be like, no, you need to like learn Houdini now, because a majority of the LA shops like only hire Houdini effects artists. And that was a wake up call, because that was like, I was gonna graduate in like a year, and then like I didn't have my demo, like my Houdini classes, till later on, and so I was just already trying to learn the basics. And then that turned into like me just loving to problem solve, and that's like perfect for an effects artist, because like a majority of your days just trying to solve problems all day. Um, and yeah, I think that's just kind of like, yeah.
Hi, my question is for Marcel and Christian. As an effects artist, if you do, how often do you get not effects related tasks such as procedural texturing or modeling and so on?
Oh, yeah, they don't give those tasks to me. um, Modeling and yeah, that's more of like a generalist job. But all of my stuff is effects. We use Houdini at the job, so yeah, it's like there's a lot of proceduralism that goes into the I guess the beginning of how I set up my shots, but it usually always kind of like ends in some type of simulation. But there are shots where there is no solver. I mean, it might be like a simple solver or something like that, but it's not, everything is not like a huge wave or a huge tornado or a house fire, So you have to learn the different ways to achieve something quickly, efficiently, but still make it look professional.
Yeah, I guess for me, like, I've done a little bit of that, but it was more of like the show, like what the show needed. Like on Boss Baby, I did like a bunch of like procedural animations of like a Photoshop file that I was given, and I had to like illustrate planets procedurally and like reveal text. So like that was like a very specific like odd thing that I had to do. And then like on Abominable, I had to like procedurally animate a flower growing, So like you can get those tasks, and it is nice to like to know that side of things. But like yeah, for the most part, it's just running sims. Like at Pixar, like we were just doing water all day, and it was just water left and right, and like you had to really like know what the solvers were doing to just really like do that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Cool. So we do have a couple of questions from chat. I'm going to point to this camera right here so you all have somewhere to look. But someone in chat asked your favorite project that you worked on. So you can each answer that individually. It wasn't specified for anyone, but what was your, well, one of, it doesn't have to be the number one, but one of your favorite projects that you got to work on? Movies.
Yeah, I think for me it was like the bad guys, because it was the first time I really had like to do something very stylized compared to like making like simulations look semi-real, because I primarily work in animation, and like that is definitely like something that like it is a learning curve like as an artist. Like if you're going from something that's like photoreal to stylized, it could be a little tricky, and that was like a fun show. But another shot like was like at Pixar, like I had to like explode the head of the water character and like make him splash everywhere. Like that was a lot of fun. That was like maybe like the most technical shot I worked on in my career. But I think those two, like the bad guys and Elemental, was fun.
For me, I would say The Boys. I don't know if anyone knows the show. There you go. No, that was my first show that I actually worked on that I watched. So I was really excited that I was working on a show that I was gonna watch in the future. So that was while I was working at third floor, so it was mostly previs. So we get the scripts and concept arts and all that. So in the morning meetings, when we go through the scripts, I was just laughing at none of my team members at the time. They didn't know the show, so I was the only one enjoying working on it. So that was fun. And after that, I would say Resident Alien. That was another show I was watching. So I mean, 80% of the time that I work, those projects I never see or never heard of before, and I started watching after working on the show. But yeah, The Boys was the first one that I I watched before I worked on it. So that was the one.
I say my favorite project so far it hasn't even came out yet. I can't even really say it, but it comes out next month. But that one. That Star Wars project is probably my favorite one, just because it just meant so much to finally be able to touch that franchise. But Pixar at Elemental, that one was probably the toughest show. Like I think that was even harder than Avatar, just because it was stylized, and you had to work in such constraints. So, but I think my funnest show had to be any show that was at Scanline, because they just let us, I don't know, Scanline has a culture of the effects artists are, every studio has like a star department. At Scanline, the effects department is like the star. So we were able to just run huge, crazy sims. It doesn't matter how heavy they were. We were rendering like days maybe at a time. It doesn't matter. Like, oh well, they're effects. They let them do whatever they wanted to do, and just learning from those guys, because that's one of those studios too. Those guys have been there working for like 15, 20 years plus. So you get to learn from all of these guys who know Flowline and 3ds Max, and they also built their own like proprietary little mini tools within those tools. So it was always cool there to learn something new, and then it turned out to be like this huge spectacular movie like Godzilla or Midway or the Zack Snyder movie. What was the Justice League? And working with James Gunn for the Suicide Squad, that was cool too. So yeah, it was just like every time, new show, new same pipeline, but it's used in a different way. So it's hard to pick one. I'll just say Scanline as a whole. That was so fun just working there. Yeah.
Hello, Marcela. You mentioned water TD, water TD, water TD. Does that mean like at a certain point when you're learning Houdini, you have to in VFX you're trying to get into, you pick a certain super specialized skill that you want to build your portfolio around, so that you're trying to get a job essentially?
I mean, that's what I tried to do. I mean, I wasn't that successful here at Gnomon just because we were just under the constraints of the machines that we were working on, right? Because there's no farm when you're in like college or school, so you have to think smarter, right? But yeah, like I was determined, like headstrong. Like anybody will tell you, Marcella was obsessed with water, and I still am. And it worked out. Like I do a lot of liquid sims now still. Yeah, it's just. I mean, obviously, we do RBDs and smoke, fire, and all that stuff, and that's great, and that's cool too. But the water is like my bread and butter. I love it. It's so fun.
Hello, I have a question for all three of you. So we all know when we graduate, you send out reels and get interviews. But after your first job, when the project is finished, sometimes they will lay off people, lay off intern. So jumping from studio to studio, how does that work? Like, do you have to submit your reel every time, or do they have people to come and reach out to you all the time?
It depends on the studio you're at. They always try to do like reverse hires, or maybe they'll try to move you to a different department if that happened after, I want to say after Godzilla when I was at NBC. Like we finished and they had staffed up to like 140 something FX artists, but after that it was like where are we gonna do all these people? So some people went to like environments, or some people went to CFX. You know what I'm saying? I just happened to jump over to Scanline, because I had a friend and he referred me, and a lot of times that's how you'll get your next job, and that's how you'll keep moving up, is because it's going to be those people that refer you to wherever they're at. So luckily, just be kind and make friends and be nice to people, and I don't think it should be an issue. As long as you have the skill set in the reel, obviously, yes, you do have to update your reel, for sure. That's a thing. I need to update mine. But yeah, like definitely interviewing every time, even though that person recommended you still have to talk to the soup. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, keep yourself updated with new softwares, so that when you have to move to a different company, then you can show them that you're updated with, you're up to date with all the new, bells and whistles that are in the industry right now, because most companies wants to hire people who are, keeping up to date. So update your reel, update your skills, be on LinkedIn, keep in touch with recruiters. It will help, and that's all I can think about right now.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is like what is on your reel, like even like coming out of school or after your job, like updating that and putting your work on there. Because a lot of times, like if a recruiter contacts you, it might be because like a supervisor saw that like, oh, you did this really cool like water shot on this one show, and we have a water show coming up, and it's like that person sounds like they're really good at what they're doing. So like it could be that like you could, there could be one portfolio piece on your reel, and that's the one that gets you your job, or you have a friend that like you worked with and they're going to this studio and they need more people, so like they recommend you, and that's how, like that's just kind of like how it goes. So yeah.
Hello. Can you guys just speak a little bit, just a question for all of you, a little bit about AI as far as how that impacts you guys, and maybe give us a sense of how studios are discussing AI and what if at all, and just and also speak on the relevancy of like the fundamentals in this changing landscape and things like that.
Yeah, I think at a like to a certain percentage, like everyone's looking into AI. Like at Pixar, like we had like like the fire characters, and like they did use AI to like procedurally create like um, shapes in the fire sims, because like a fire sim, it's like every shape is changing almost every frame, and like how do you stylize that? And the only way they were able to do that was like art directing it with AI. Like there was still an artist using the tool, and there was like a lot of shots that they had to do, and they had to check it like every day and make sure it was working. So like I think um, like there is uses for that, um, and then there's a lot of like prime examples of like where it's like copyright violations, right? So like I think it's still kind of new, and there's um, like it's not a lot of it really isn't AI either. It's like a machine learning. So like you're training a computer to like find shapes in simulations, or you're training a computer how to like match someone else's art online. So it's like it's kind of like how I would say that's going. You have any questions?
Also, if you're referring to Midjourney or any kind of those softwares, I don't think you can legally, register them as your genuine IP, like original IP. So basically, anything generated with that is basically just scribbles, I guess, because anyone can steal that thing that you generated, and basically you cannot own that. So it's just a fun tool to play around with, but that's about it. Um, but again, it's good. It's a good ideation tool, the way I see it. But it's not a concept art tool. It's not art either. So it's just a random image randomizer, kind of. So I basically use it for ideations. Like when I have an idea, it's just super blur, but I can put it in words. That's when I use Midjourney, and then I add that along with my mood board that I have for before I get into concept art. So that's how I use that. But again, it's not art, or it's not replacement to an artist.
What was the second part? It was like a two-part question. What was the second part?
I believe that the second part, or at least the last part, was about the relevancy of the fundamentals as AI, because I see it being used for 3D and for filmmaking and animation
Hmm.
nowadays. So it's like, and I recognize that AI is kind of like a catch-all term and it's misused to encompass other
Definitely,
stuff.
yeah.
But as a learner, how do I? It's caused like attention to shift, right? Like you're learning the fundamentals, you're learning perspective, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, like everyone's like saying AI is like now you have to learn how to prompt. And that's another it's another thing you have to learn, and I'm just trying to prioritize for myself and my students.
I mean, I think it's something definitely worth learning. Like I wouldn't like say stay away from it because it is the future. Like if machine learning is basically what it is when they say AI. It is the future. Learn as much as you. I'd say my advice is learn as much as you can about it. Obviously, you technically can't use it or own it, so it's really just I don't want to say it's just for fun because some studios are using it, but it's going to be interesting as we move forward and seeing how that conversation around copyrights and who gets to own what is going to happen. But right now it's just like, oh, this is cool. How we're going to use it and how we're going to call it ours, that's the whole different conversation. So I say learn it because it's just cool. I mean, just like Houdini was cool when everybody was scared about Houdini when it had to switch over from Maya to Houdini. We learned it, So just learn it. Yeah.
Also, automation is always the key. Like it's been like that with motion capture as well. So learning the tool is not a bad thing. So you got to be updated with it instead of resisting it, because eventually automation is gonna be the thing. So.
I have a question for Santos. You mentioned that your primary motivation when you were working through your projects was to make a cinematic by the end, and I think that's a really attractive part of being a 3D generalist because you get to kind of touch everything. I wanted to ask, at what point did you feel like you really owned a shot, and also what tasks did you work on as a junior 3D generalist as well, just starting out?
As a junior, I started as a character artist. So I was given the task to model it, look dev, and texturing. And as a modeler, I was again in touch with the rigging department because they have to rig the character, so they have to make sure it's riggable, right? So you're in contact with them, and then again, you're also talking to animation people because certain movements might not be as like what do you say, like good looking as they would expect. So that was my first junior gig, and then it goes on. Like sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we want you to do facial rigging, and have some animated displacement in there." And sometimes they'll say, "Hey, we want you to do like look dev, model, light, and sometimes comp." So it depends on the company as well, because the bigger companies that you go to, they only give you specific task, like either it's modeling or rigging. But the moment you go to a smaller company, they expect you to do more, like because again, it's a smaller company, smaller group. So as a generalist, you have to put on many more hats. But at the same time, you're not alone. You can ask your supervisor any questions. Say, for example, when I was given a task to do facial animation, I knew how to do like a basic rig with bones, but I didn't know anything about like animated displacements or anything. So I asked my supervisor. He showed me a few tricks and tips how to do that. And but what he was asking was way more advanced than what he was showing me. So he pointed me towards some tutorials. So they gave me enough time to learn, and then I got to finish the task. So again, you don't have to be scared when you are given a task that you never done before. Just keep asking questions, and also be straightforward when they give you a task that how much you know about it, or if you don't even know anything about it. So that
So
if
don't
they,
lie.
yeah, exactly.
Got it.
So be straightforward and tell them what you know, what you don't know before you take the task, so that they will give you the material to learn and finish the task.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some more questions from our internet viewers. As far as areas of math, were there any areas of math that you explored on your journey, and what subjects of math have you yet to discover?
Yeah, so I guess
let's get math with it.
yeah, I still don't really know math well, and like the computer calculates it for me, and I know like maybe an algorithm that I need to throw at it, and it solves it. So um, yeah, I guess for me, like I've had to like learn all the technical aspects. Like I really like knowing what a tool does and how it's doing it, and that definitely helps because like for example um, like I teach the destruction class here at Gnomon, and like like when I was learning it, you actually had to go into the solvers and know what the solvers were doing. But now like Houdini's evolved, and like it's all like a big tool that you could use. But like deep down, it's like if it breaks, you still kind of have to know what it's doing under the hood, or else like it's there's a bunch of more questions you gotta solve. So like yeah, I guess like I like the technical side, and like if the more technical you get too, like the harder tasks you'll get. So um, that's it's fun for me. So yeah.
Yeah, like I totally agree. Like I'm not the math person. Like I understand the tool. Like I guess the best way I can explain it is when I was at Weta, and before I even got on the water team, I was on the fire team. the fire dev team, let's say that. And they taught us basically from like the molecule all the way up to the solver, what's going on, how it's being made, how it works in the real world. Obviously, I'm not those scientists, because there are true scientists who build these solvers, and it's amazing to work with these people because it's like it's so incredibly smart. It's like it just blows your mind. But being around them and then just kind of just sitting in there and trying to absorb like equations off of SIGGRAPH papers that they might have published or whatever, and just learning as much as you can about the real element that you're working with. Like even when I switched over to the water side of things, learning exactly what water is and how it behaves and how it reacts to certain situations. So I think it's not all about knowing everything about math. It's really just about being able to understand it and appreciate it and use it to what you need it to be, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we have another one. Now, I do understand that when you all were in the labs looking over each other's shoulders and kind of communicating in person was very beneficial. But this person had a specific question on if there was any way you could have had the same experience studying remotely. So obviously in that capacity, no, but was there anything that you would have been able to do remotely as far as the communication with your peers that maybe this person is trying to tap into, getting a little bit of that magic?
I mean, I think the best answer I can give you is I'm very fortunate. Well, we are very fortunate. We finished our diplomas while we were before the pandemic. So once that hit, and you think about the students that weren't in the labs and they graduated literally over that year or two period working from home, it's like wow. Like, and then they're still turning in good work. Like, you have no excuse. That motivated me. Like, oh man, they're coming for me. Like, because there's no way I wouldn't have been able to learn as much as because I'm very much a social learner, you know? So for students that did that and had to go through that whole pandemic while they were here in school, that hats off to you, because you're probably more driven than I am, because I had support. Like I had people I can just get up out of my seat and go ask. When you don't have that and you're learning and you're just talking to people on your phones or Zoom or whatever it is, yeah, that sounds, and to be at Gnomon doing that's had to be hard. So yeah, I just hats off to whoever graduated within that time frame, and hopefully they're still working, because that's amazing. Truly.
I'd say call, don't text. That's the best way to keep in touch and form a better bond. That's what we do even till today. My friends and I, we just call because texting is way too time consuming. So we just call, and if there's any issue, we just talk it over the phone or just Zoom call or Discord or anything. So yeah, we do have Discord groups or Facebook Messenger groups. So yeah, we still keep in touch. So again, call, don't text.
Yeah, I guess like just build those communities online. Like if you're like, there's 5 of you like taking the same effects classes, maybe just have like a Discord group with the 5 of you, and you could have those calls and like share the knowledge or like the notes between classes or something. Like always just having a someone to talk to, like if it's online through a Google Meet or like a Zoom call or even Discord. I would just like have those communities, like try to build those communities or find them. Like there's a Houdini Discords that are like, they're unofficial, but like there's like thousands of artists in them. Like yeah.
So if there's anything to take away from tonight, communication is key. So, okay, this next question is from Marcella specifically, but we'll need a little bit of preamble, because in the question it says, has having the VFX podcast help with connections and relationships in the industry? So for those who don't know, why don't you tell us what this VFX podcast is, and then the question is,
has it broadened your connections within the industry?
Oh, it definitely has. Well, first off, the podcast started with me just interviewing my friends and my teammates and the people that I obviously work with in production as well. So,
Cast is called.
oh yes, the podcast the podcast is called the VFX Club. So yes, what we do is we interview just people in the industry. Most, like I said, most of the time is I work with that person, or I've working with that person really. So yeah, it's definitely helped me, I guess, navigate really the industry, because a lot of people who come on the podcast or have experience. Like I just had a lady on there. Her name is Lori Beck. She's been working in the industry for 30 years. Like all of that wisdom just poured into a podcast, and then now y'all know. Like, so it's been a lot of that. And juniors, I've had juniors on. I've talked to them just to get a temperature check, like what's going on in Noman, and how are you like surviving outside of that? Because that's a lot of experience within that first like 2 or 3 years of coming up too. So yeah, I definitely talked to everybody, and from production to recruiting, on set, that side of things. That's very interesting to learn about that. So yeah, it's just definitely broadened my whole scope of what is possible within the industry, and the communication, and just the knowledge that's like gained just by listening to people.
This one's for all three of you. So from jumping from so many different styles of work, I'm wondering if any of you have to deal with like feedback where the feedback doesn't necessarily make any sense, and if so, like how do you even go about designing your shot so that it feels right? Unless every feedback that you get is very technical and specific.
I mean, I guess over time you get like it's experience. Like you learn say one day you turn something in, you think it looks good, is going totally in the wrong direction, and then that's where you have to just correct. They'll tell you what you need to do, and if you don't know how to do that, there's always somebody you can go ask. So it's not like you're just like in a bubble by yourself. There's always somebody, your lead, your buddy, your supervisor, if they're not that busy, which they always are. But sometimes they'll have like time in the evening or whatever to help you out if nobody else can. But yeah, does that answer it?
I mean, there's been times where I had to work on like super hyper realistic stuff, and then right away the next project would be like what's that? Golden fish crackers, like really stylized ones. So for me, that switch was so like fast. So I just watched like Barney and Friends for like few hours just to get into their mindset. And then my supervisor, he was like really good. To the end of the project, that's when I realized that he was the one. His work were some of the works that I used to have as my wallpaper back before even coming here. So that's when I started like asking him way more questions, trying to learn like shading and look development from him. So, but yeah, like just it's about the mindset. Just try to watch something that would get you into that.
Yeah, I guess for like working in animation, because the styles are constantly changing, and we're trying to adapt and learn what other people are doing and how we could use that to like for our styles. But there are times like that I've worked and I've gotten notes like, oh, I need some lost and found in this area, like for some fog I'm doing. And I'm like, I have no idea what lost and found means. And like, how do I interpret that? And then like, I might ask my lead, and they're like, oh no, they just meant like cut some holes in here and there. So like there's some like negativity. I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. Like just I didn't know like what their term for it was. So like sometimes like you can get notes like that, and you're like, well, I don't really know. And then there's the other side where it's like you're having a real like technical problem with your shot, and you're trying to interpret that to like the director or like your supervisor or your lead, and like it can go back and forth, like, and like they don't understand like the problem you're having until you actually show them. So it's like yeah, it can be difficult at times. Yeah.
Can I go? Awesome. I have two questions for all of you. Firstly, is that when I came to LA, everyone said that in film industry, networking is really, really important. So while you were at Gnomon, did you make it a point to like go to 3 or 4 networking events every month or something like that? Because uh, if we want to get good at a skill, we have to devote a lot of time to it, but networking can take its time too, and it could feel like a lot of waste of time. So did you used to like, and nowadays there's like Eventbrite and Meetup and all of that stuff, but while you were a student, did you used to like frequent networking events? And secondly, after your time at Gnomon was over, what was the process of going after jobs? Was it like, did you go in person with your with a stack of your resumes? And if you were reaching out to recruiters, were there like a couple of websites, LinkedIn being the one? So those are the two questions.
Yeah, I think when we were in school, they had the like Houdini user groups, and they just started those like when we were in school, and like we would just go to that like as a group, like 5 of us, we would just all like just end up there and sing like the big technical talks of like how they did the ants and Ant-Man, like that kind of stuff, and you meet those artists that are working at the studios, and like that definitely helps because it's like you'll become friends with those people, like especially like if you keep going to them and then you keep running into them and you're talking to them and you're having a beer with them, so it's like they're like that is like very helpful, and as well as like just keeping an online presence, like having posts like on LinkedIn, like if you worked on your first commercial, like just put it out there, um, like promoting yourself as an artist, like you have to sell yourself, right? um, and like for the interview questions, uh, like my very first interviews, it was like, yeah, I had to bring a resume in and they would look at it and then they would go through frame by frame of my shots and ask me how I did those shots. And like later, like on in our careers, it's not really about those questions. It's just getting to know you as a person. So like, because it is a kind of niche industry, and like people that you meet at one studio, like you go to the next studio and you someone that you're sitting next to has worked with that person that you previous worked with for like 5 years, so like you kind of already kind of know them because you already know that person that you previously worked with, and it's like easy to make friends with those people, so it's like so yeah.
Didn't really have to go anywhere. No one had plenty of events here, so we just popped up here and here at the stage. We met a lot of artists here. Some of them used to share the work that they did for 6 months that was covered completely with Pyro FX. And they talked about how much they hated FX people. Just kidding. But yeah, like you get to meet so many people. And as far as the job interviews, Noman actually helped us with like the placements department. They helped us get our interviews. And when I was interviewing at Blur, one of the supervisors who interviewed me was one of the speakers here at Noman, so that's how he recognized me, and then we started talking. So that helped, and also I got some really good advice here as to how to maintain online presence, like Christian said. So basically, what we were told was don't post work in progress unless it's really good. So basically, post only the good work. And also, when you're going into the interviews, your demo reel is what's going to get you the interview, but your personal work, like work in progress, is what's going to get you the job, because the interviewers, they want to see how self-driven you are. So your personal projects, no matter if it's done or not, just make sure you have something that's work in progress that you're working on the side, so that and obviously they'll ask you some technical questions as to how you did it and what you're doing, and what is it that you're doing new in your personal project, because doing the same thing that you already showed in your demo reel, it's basically nothing, right? Because you already know that, and showing the same thing again in your personal work is basically saying he's doing the same thing again. because the whole point of personal work is that you're learning something new. So even if it's work in progress, just put it in there for your job interview. Just take an iPad, have that in there, talk to them, and while you're talking to them, share that, oh, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I've been experimenting with, and that will help you a lot. So.
Yeah, I agree with what Christian said about the whole presence. Their online presence is very important, especially in effects when you have to show something moving, like they want to see animation, they want to see your composition, how you lay things out. As far as the interview goes, when you're first starting out, that's all that you have is personal work. It was your reel or your Gnomon reel or whatever. So that needs to be at least close to what. I mean, it sucks to say this, but it needs to look professional, or professional enough to where they'll be able to trust you. Like, oh, they're ready to, or they're showing promise, or they have potential, stuff like that. So I think that part is very important as well. I didn't have any, trying to think, outside of my Gnomon reel. Ever since then, I had like my professional work, and that's what got me, well, keeps me working. And the fact that I have friends that will just, hey, where are you at? How can we help? We're doing this project in 6 months. You want to jump over here? It's like that. It's more about your networking at that point. But yeah, personal work, like, I definitely agree with both of these guys said, for sure.
Hi. You mentioned being passion-driven for this career. So, and you all mentioned that you have this habit of having like a personal project going on. What's the time management on that with having a professional job and everything else? And how does it help with being a creative?
What was the last part? How does it help with what?
Being like staying creative.
Oh, a lot. Like even when I was working, like we picked up. I remember when we first started doing all of those Rebelway classes, stuff like that. We were doing that while we were like working on shows and shots. You go home at night and you just turn on your machine and you work on your personal stuff. Like that's how I got. Well, that's why I guess my level of water like accelerated because I wasn't doing water for years at the beginning of my career, so I had to learn it professionally through another source. So that took time and dedication, and me not going to get drunk after work. I'm gonna go home and work on whatever this is. It's a sacrifice you just have to make if you really truly want to do that. I think that's the biggest takeaway with personal work while you're working in the studio is that you're gonna have to sacrifice some time. So for me, that was fine because, like I said, I'm built that way. But for those who like might find that their social life is more important, then that's fine too. You just need to figure out how to work that practice in, because that's really gonna take you to the next level and get you better shots. And the better shots you get, the more that you learn, because those are gonna be hard shots usually. So yeah.
I'd say you have to maintain a balance a little bit. So let's just say if you have enough energy to continue working on your personal project right after a day's work, do that. If not, get some rest and dedicate the weekends for your personal project so that you get more rest. Again, if you are working on the weekdays on your personal project, dedicate the weekends only for yourself. Like go on a drive, biking or whatever, just spend some time with friends and family, whatever it is. Maintain that balance. If not, also diet. Maintain good diet. Because as a student, you won't really pay attention to diet because you're always trying to get your assignments done. So diet, personal life, and then work. So either you work on your personal projects on weekdays or on the weekends. That's how I try it, so it's up to you.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of what they both said. Like I guess at the start of my career, I was working like after I'd get home from work, like there'd be a problem that I needed to solve at work on my shots, and like I would just spend time at home like trying to recreate a scenario and trying to solve those problems, so then I could fix like the technical issues, because like I wasn't as technical like starting out in my career. And yeah, like I would do like try personal projects. I do a lot of like R&Ds, like like you see like the little like whitewater budgets that I was doing. Like that was a personal project because I wanted to like learn what Tops was doing, and I built the setup that would just run every like parameter in the whitewater solver in Houdini on my machine. It did it for like 2 weeks. It would just be on for like 2 weeks, just running all those sims and just kind of seeing what those like values do. And that was like a fun personal project. But like I guess like you also get the crunch time at work, and that can hit you. And like that's just kind of like when you gotta like put it down, and you need to focus on yourself and your health. So like it is a balance. Like so when you have those free times, it's good to like do those self studies and like learn.
Awesome. So with those self studies and your personal stuff, if anybody here or on the interwebs wanted to stay up to date with y'all, not only what you're doing personally but professionally, how do they stay up to date with you?
For me, I post most of my stuff like on Vimeo, and you can get access to that if you go to my website, which is ogvfx.com, because my last name is Olan-Geddes. So yeah, so that's kind of my main thing.
Instagram and LinkedIn, those are the only two social medias that I use. So yeah, Santhosh Koneru. My website is also the same thing, santhoshkoneru.com. Name should I?
Yeah, same thing. Like I guess my two biggest things are Instagram and LinkedIn. You can find me by my name, Marcella Brown, or if you're interested more in the VFX Club, there's the VFX Club. It's that short on LinkedIn and Instagram. So yeah.
Well, then lastly, I think all we have to do is thank our wonderful guests for hanging out with us today. Thank you so much for answering all these questions and spending time with us. Thank you at home. If you want to find out what Gnomon can do for you, go ahead and hit us up at gnomon.edu. And until next time, we'll see you. Bye. Bye.